All right, fellas, here we are in a Pokemon Horizons video to go over the guidance of the Black Rayquaza. This is the newest episode of Pokemon Horizons, episode 87. Got done watching it a few hours ago. This episode is hype. This video is mostly just going to be like covering my thoughts over the episode as it goes. I'm not going to be reacting to it or even playing the video. These are freeze frames that I took captures of as I was watching it. That's all there is to it. So let's just get into this. So of course it's called Guidance of the Black Rayquaza, which makes sense when we go into the later segment of like the video, obviously. The video opens up with Gibeon and his Zygarde coming to the spot where they had initially dug up the Lockwium, which I'm going to be calling it Lockwium instead of Rakurium, just because I watched dub, except for obviously the latest, all the latest episodes have not been dubbed because, their dub's not catched up. I don't know why they don't do simultaneously sub and dub, but it is what it is. But we've got, of course, Gibeon and Zygarde here at this area, and like, this is the place. So time's gone by. Over 100 years have passed, since the initial like fight between Lucius and Gibeon. There obviously a lot has happened. Gibeon's a lot older. Zygarde lost all of its cells. Lucius is supposedly dead. Ristle is certainly dead. There's a lot of memories here. In a sense, I suppose this gigantic Lockwium serves as your gravestone. He's referring to Lucius, of course, having died protecting Rakua and like the ecosystem basically by sealing up the Lockwium with Terapagos and his 6 Pokemon, which, yeah, it's a little sentimental. Then we see a bunch of Zygarde cells coming out of the ground and going into Gibeon's Zygarde. We had seen this like a few episodes ago when they were talking about the Lockwium before they actually got to Rakua, and where they had shown like a frame at the very end of the episode where a lot of like green things were glowing around the underground Lockwium, and it was actually Zygarde cells. I can make some more points about this, but I want to actually theorize in like a future thing that we might see Mega Zygarde in this way in the anime because of the Lockwium, but I'm not going to go into that here. So we see them all go into Zygarde. Of course, it's Zygarde cells, and well, he gets back his 50% form. So Zygarde, his shiny Zygarde is back in his 50% form. We can see just how big it is. Look how big this thing is compared to Gibeon. I mean, honestly, it probably should be bigger, but like if we assume that Gibeon might be like AZ, honestly, he might have gotten bigger despite his age. He might be like 6.5 feet tall or something like that. I mean, we can consider that Zygarde here is like easily over like 25 feet tall, up to like its head or whatever, which, it's pretty crazy. It's a pretty damn big guy, clearly. So yeah, Zygarde got his 50% form back. Gibeon is like, all right, let's, stand up and stand with my partner or whatever and all that. And well, he ends up falling because he is old, he's crippled. He's lived for 120 years at this point and being literally only surviving because of the Lockwium, in his body. Or like being supplied to him, which he does grab a crystal here, as you can kind of see. There's the crystal right there, and he goes to try and grab it, and like ends up putting it in like his little arm thing here, which ends up like powering his either powering the thing he's wearing or it like revitalizes his body, which I guess either makes sense because Lockwium does have like its regenerative properties. It's probably a more safe and controlled way for him to actually ingest the Lockwium, and not like be able to actually physically move, because you can see after that he gets up fine. Like he's not like overexerting himself too much, I guess, but he can stand just fine, and he controls Zygarde to dig up the Lockwium, and we can see Amethio behind him is like, hey, don't do that, because well, clearly, you shouldn't. It's been 100 years, he's clearly not learned anything. And then we fade into the opening. And then we've got the guidance of the Black Rayquaza as the actual episode, which again, we will go into that later on why this naming is so important, because it kind of is, like the foundation of the entire series. We kind of get that reveal here. Goes on for Amethio to talk to Gibeon, saying that spinal, how's it said in English, actually? I don't even know. I know it's spinal in like Japanese or whatever, spinal. Again, I don't. Whatever. I'm just gonna say it's like Spinel or something, just because it's easier. But what is his actual name in English? It is still Spinel. Okay. But anyway, he said that he's gonna be betraying. I just bumped the mic. He's saying that he's gonna be like betraying Gibeon, or he's trying to betray Gibeon, and he's familiar with something called the Lockwium Sphere, which I don't think I didn't get the frame, but Gibeon looked a tiny bit surprised at it. And I was like, okay, he's kind of considering that like there's a good chance that Spinel knows stuff that Gibeon doesn't about the Lockwood, probably a lot, frankly. I mean, he's like the biggest, researcher or whatever, so it makes sense. And he says that Spinel's trying to, and then Gibeon backs up or counters Amethio's claims, saying no, Spinel's not trying to betray me, saying that Spinel is taking the initiative for drawing out the potential of Lockwood. He's making a lot of headway in like the research, and it's good for people, Pokemon, whatever. But then Amethio counters back, saying that under like the influence of Lockwood, that Spinel's Umbreon had obviously went berserk. We saw that frame before. We'll actually see it later in this episode, where clearly there is like the dangerous properties of Lockwood. And he says that Lockwood is too dangerous to control. There's many other ways to like help people in Pokemon. Gibeon counters that, saying, "Nah, that's not correct. Is that really what you think? That's pathetic." And then he says, "All right, that's enough. Don't care." He doesn't really want to talk. He just wants to get this Lockwood out of here. And he commands Zygarde to dig up the Lockwood. And well, we had seen that back in episode 75, Zygarde had betrayed Gibeon before by actually trying to seal away the Lockwood, losing a lot of its cells in the process and stopping it, as Lucius also did alongside it. But we can see here now that Zygarde is actually trying to dig up the Lockwood this time, and we can see that its activation, or like its actual messing with it, has started to like produce this giant like mushroom cloud looking thing here, where you can see it's just rising up into the sky, looking pretty insane, obviously. And then so everyone else sees it. They were fighting the explorers, like Liko, Roy, and Dot. They were fighting the explorers, and they see the giant cloud come up and like, okay, we got to get out of here. And we can see that Terapagos is angry. Terapagos is not happy to be seeing this. Obviously, I mean, that makes a lot of sense here. It's reminded is like, okay, well, I don't want this thing to happen like that happened 100 years. Don't want that to happen again, which makes sense. So yeah, interesting to see. So obviously the explorers don't want them to get past. They want to just keep them stalled for as long as possible, so they don't like mess with Gibeon's plan to dig up the Lockwood. But we do actually have Amethio's assistants, like partners, whatever. I forget their actual names. I was gonna look up their names prior to this, but I'm actually gonna do that right now as I'm speaking. Because I just don't remember. Onya and Zerk. Okay, there. I do not know what their names. Okay, so it's Konya and Gills in Japan, whatever. Zerk. All right, Onya and Zerk, they come in with their Rhydon and Golduck, and they protect the main trio here, and actually fight off the explorers, or at least stall them for long enough. And Freed also does come in, make sure that they don't like try and chase Liko, Roy, and Dot as they're going deeper into where Gibeon is, and they also fly on themselves. We do see Coral or Sango, whatever you want to call her, get super pissed off. This frame is so funny. I fucking love it. It's actually just amazing to see the Golduck and the Rhydon so damn scared, hiding behind them. I love it. It's so funny. Anyway, moving on. Say they're ready to receive any punishment. Of course, they've been following Amethio this entire time. They're like, obviously, we don't care about the fact that Amethio's like quote unquote a traitor or anything to the explorers. They follow him. They don't follow the explorers' ideals. We might get some more backstory on that. We might have already, honestly, I don't remember. But, they're very loyal to Amethio, and they don't care that they are going to, be charged for probably insubordination. And then we end up, and then after that, the explorers say, it's time for us to move on to our next mission or whatever, and they just kind of like, okay, whatever, it is what it is. So they got to prepare for the next stage of Gibeon's plan, or I guess Spinel's, whichever one, honestly. And then we can see that as Zygarde is trying to dig up the rest of Lockwood, it starts glowing and shining. We can see the effects that digging up this Lockwood is having. And obviously it's not really good. Amethio's saying, is this, do you really want to keep doing this? Why are you not going to listen to me or whatever? How can you not see that this stuff is bad? Because obviously, it really is not a good thing. And then Spinel comes in, he just appears, says, weren't you put on leave? And tries to like, do his Spinel things, being an asshole, basically, being a conniving prick, as is pretty usual. And then we see, obviously, we got our main quartet here, Freed, Liko, Roy, and Dot, with their Pokemon here. They've made it to the inside area where Gibeon and Amethio are, and Spinel as well. And, well, of course, we've got a crowd now. We've got Amethio as Liko points out, and we've got, again, our main quartet here. So we got the whole party, basically. It's going to be a pretty big showdown. There's Terapagos looking very, very pissed at Gibeon. Gibeon recognizes it, obviously. Is like, okay, we don't want this to happen again. That's not good. And then this is their first time actually seeing Gibeon. Reminder that we obviously have known what Gibeon has looked like since the end of Season 2, right? Like, we knew who Gibeon was since, like, the first season, basically, when the explorers were talking to him over the, like, transmitter, or whatever the hell you call them. But we knew what he actually looked like since Season 2, looked freaking creepy. And then we got, more and more information until episode 75, where they had actually, learned at the Crystal Pool who he was, but they had never actually seen Gibeon until now, which is, obviously a less big reveal for the audience, but obviously a bigger reveal for them as characters. So they're actually seeing Gibeon for the first time. And while he is over 100, yeah, Dot points out, unexpectedly, is he over 100 years old? Yes, he's over 100 years old. This guy is old. And then Roy also points out the white Zygarde, his partner. It all lines up with Ristel's story, so makes sense. And then with Zygarde actually digging up the Lockwood, they're like, what effects could this have? What could actually happen? And well, Freed makes the appropriate conclusion that Lockwood could just collapse again. There could be some bad things that happen. It could be a repeat of 100 years ago, where this whole area of Lockwood got completely destroyed because of the Lockwium being messed with, which makes sense. After that, the 6 heroes Pokeballs shine. They all end up coming out of the Pokeballs and are like, this is not a good thing or whatever, but they also end up coming out for something we're going to see here in a little bit. A very, very big reveal, probably the biggest reveal of this episode. Biggest reveal probably since like episode 75 or something like that. But you can see all of them here. We've got Rayquaza, Moltres, Arboliva, Lapras, Cleaver, and Gouging Fire. They're all looking at the giant Lockwium pool, just a giant mass. Like this, I mean, like, look at this. How can you think that there's something good in this when it looks so damn terrifying, just, off of sheer glance? That's just insane on their part. Anyway, we can see Gibeon here looking at it as, or like, kind of seeing the Pokemon around him. He's like, okay, I don't care that Lucius' Pokemon are all here. We're going to keep digging this shit up. So Zygarde, he's telling Zygarde to ignore it all, just dig up the Lockwium, and he does, and well, we can see it in the figure. We can see Terapagos is extremely happy. Lucius is alive. Why? Why is this guy alive? Look, all right, I'm cool with this. I don't really care. Like, this is fine to me that, he's alive and all that, but it's like, why? This is clearly some big, basic plot type of BS where, the big hero guy is still alive, which is, again, I'm fine with it. I don't really care that much that he's still here, but it's definitely interesting to see. So Lucius was actually inside of that crystal that Zygarde was digging up. And, well, we're going to see a big, big reveal here. And this is why all of his Pokemon were so happy. Not happy, obviously, given the circumstances, but they were around. They were like, okay, we know what's about to happen. And, well, again, Lucius is here, and his 6 Pokemon are around. Terapagos is around. Gibeon and Zygarde. It's basically a repeat of 100 years ago. It's like, let's come back where we left off. Lucius points out everyone around him, Liko, Roy, all the Rising Volt tacklers. Points out Gibeon, obviously, saying he's heavy-handed as ever, obviously. And then Gibeon says, "This was your goal, Zygarde. You have betrayed me once more." Zygarde has been consistently and constantly betraying Gibeon despite being his partner this entire time. Which this makes this, you can make your own theories about this all you want. Like, there is so much you can like get up with this, like thinking about how Zygarde is like the order Pokemon, protecting the ecosystem, stuff like that. This guy has betrayed Gibeon multiple times. He betrayed Gibeon by sealing away the Lockwium and shedding its form, and staying with Gibeon over the past 100 years, and then coming back to Rakua and unsealing Lucius as it's digging up the Lockwium. Zygarde betrayed Gibeon once again. And then we get these awesome panels. I just wanted to include these awesome segment panels for like cutting to like ad breaks and stuff, where we've got Gibeon and Zygarde here, and then Lucius and Rayquaza here. Look at that. Those are amazing parallels. I hope we can get these as standalone like PNG images, or someone can like upscale them and cut out the background and stuff. Like these are amazing frames. I love these so much. And then everyone is just completely surprised. Even Speed, look at this guy. We've never seen this guy look this flabbergasted before. Well, Lucius being alive, and even look at Gibeon here. He is not having a good day. It is not a good day to be Gibeon for sure. And then obviously Liko says Lucius, and well, It turns out another big reveal is that Lucius knows everything. He knows who Liko is. He sees his Pokemon, which I wanted to know. He knows down all their names, and he still knows down Entei as being Entei, even though it isn't. It's gouging fire, and he knows that. You'll see why. And look at you all, well, Pagogo. We got Terapagos, of course. It's so cute, and there's a big hug right there. Awesome. Super, super cute. Terapagos is obviously very happy to see Lucius again. And well, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are, honestly. It's pretty interesting the guy's even alive, just sealed within Rakurium. So, Lucius starts trying to talk. Spinel just wants to, get this over with, but Gibeon stops him. It's like, all right, let's kind of hear the guy out, whatever. Let him talk. And he says that he's been waiting for you members of the Rising Volt Tacklers. Again, this guy knows what's been happening for the past however long, 100 years, right? He has been paying attention. It's like, how does he know though? It's like, how does he know who these people are? He shouldn't know his descendant. He shouldn't know the Rising Volt Tacklers. He should realistically only know basically what happened at the end when he sealed himself, and then now, right? There shouldn't be any memories in those gaps. But as he reveals here, Zygarde has shown him what's been happening in the outside world. So not only did Zygarde initially seal away the Rakurium alongside Lucius, come back and dig up Lucius, but in the in-between, over the course of 100 years, Zygarde has been feeding memories and all of that to Lucius, so he's caught up on everything that's been happening the past 100 years. He knows all the adventures that have been happening. He knows about Liko. He knows about Free. He knows about Roy. All of them. He knows of Gibeon's exploits with the current explorers as well, right? He knows everything that's been happening. Zygarde's been feeding him memories. And Gideon says, "How dare you, Zygarde, feigning being enchained and going as far as to monitor me." I will be honest, I don't know who he's referring to exactly between Lucius and Zygarde with the enchained part, because Lucius was technically enchained. Zygarde seemingly was not, but it was also weakened, so he could be referring to both. I think it's a little bit of interesting to kind of think about who Gibeon is really referring to here, because he's also feigning it, is like faking, basically, which I think he's talking about Zygarde myself, and obviously Zygarde was monitoring him in his 10% form. And then Lucius goes to borrow some of Terapagos' power, because of course he can. Apparently he's fucking God. I don't know how he manages to do that. But apparently he can just use Terapagos' power to explain what happened. So after the events of 100 years ago, after Ristel's story in episode 75, what immediately happened after was, well, obviously, the end where they stopped the Rakurium from spreading into the world, and he was sealed in Rakua. Lucius was sealed in Rakua, probably sealed inside of that Rakurium for 100 years. Don't know how, it probably got pretty damn boring in there, I would have to say, right? But, he was just sealed here for 100 years, which is insane. And then he goes into a little bit more, seemed to have slept for a long time, which makes sense. Again, he was sealed, kind of like in a deep sleep, like a fucking Sleeping Beauty type of thing, right? Again, it makes sense. But then he heard a voice in his head, which was Gibeon's Zygarde. So this is kind of bringing back like how Zygarde can talk in the anime and talk to other people, right? Which is only ever really seen in the games in the form of Arceus, I believe. And also maybe Dialga and Palkia, I think, in Legends Arceus. Either way, Pokemon talking to people is becoming more and more common in the series, and Zygarde has a Pokemon that can talk to people. Makes sense. It's got cells splattered everywhere, and obviously those can kind of like gather up. It's probably one of the smartest Pokemon just ever, given that thing right there, right? So Gibeon Zygarde has been talking to Lucius, feeding him memories, and for these 100 years, it's used the cells that was left in Rakua, as well as its cells throughout the world, to monitor the exposure of Rakurium to the ecosystems of the world, basically. Seeing how is Rakurium actually affecting the entire planet, how is it affecting Rakua specifically. It's used all of its cells, because obviously Zygarde is a Pokemon made up of all the cells. It's using those cells to monitor the entire world. Its cells have gathered all over the planet, so we can see everywhere and see exactly what is happening. Zygarde is the order Pokemon. This makes complete sense. The fact that they are using Zygarde in this way is something we have been really wanting pretty much ever since its debut. Is like, can we actually have Zygarde do its job of managing the world and monitoring what is exactly happening? And while having an existential threat like Rakurium, being on the planet, like, we got to really monitor this and see what's happening. And well, it's been monitoring the ecosystems, saying, okay, Rakua is a threat. It's an ever-expanding threat. It saw that Rakurium is going to eventually, do something, cause something bad to happen, especially under the circumstances of being put in the hands of a bad person, probably like Gibeon or Spinel, right? Though Gibeon is not a bad person in 10, which is one of the cooler things I actually kind of want to go over, but we'll go over that, I think, in a little bit. So, yeah. And then Emethio makes the conclusion. It's like, obviously, okay, Rakurium is a bad thing. It's like, he had been fed the story a few episodes ago of Hamber being like, okay, Lucius betrayed Gibeon, which I guess in a sense you could say is true, but obviously, it's really just a matter of your morality, I guess, right? But obviously he had been fed the story and is like, now, okay, so it makes sense why he did it, because this shit is dangerous, right? Rakurium does not originate from this planet. We finally get that confirmation that Rakurium is not some source of like underground energy that is like something that should not be managed by humans, which, would have made sense too, but now it's something we were confirmed that is not from the planet, which is extremely interesting to me if they actually opt to explore it more than this as just being some extraterrestrial like substance, right? I think if they were to like manage this as like a Deoxys type of thing, not as like if Deoxys was the like creator or like source or like something inside of the Rakurium, right? Like I don't think Deoxys needs to be incorporated into the story specifically, but like if they were to incorporate that this was like a Pokemon or some like civilization of like, again, something interesting in like space or whatever that ended up bringing this to the planet, they could like bring this to a whole nother layer, but I don't think they really need to, and I don't think they really will. I think they're just going to explain this, oh, this is from another planet, that's why it's so damn dangerous. Don't touch it, obviously. I think that's kind of what they're going for. Gibeon's like, all right, this stuff is BS. Zygarde, yeah, I don't care if this stuff is dangerous. It's clearly got properties to like extend human life, right? But Lucius is saying with Terapagos now revived, and all of the stuff happening, the 6 heroes have been revived, like not revived, but like gathered. The Terapagos is now revived. It's time for the plan to go back into motion, and that's what Gibeon kind of did. He came back to Rakua, tried to dig up the Rakurium after 100 years, and then we get the big reveal of this episode. Why this episode is called Guidance to the Black Rayquaza, which I guess I could go all the way back if we really want to. Sure, why not? We'll just keep doing this. Yeah, okay. And yeah, this is why the episode is called The Guidance of the Black Rayquaza. You'll see here just in a second. Okay, there we go. Man, I should have done this a little bit better. Anyway, so yeah, there's all that. Yeah, here it is. Zygarde sent a message to my Rayquaza, which had left its ball. I want you to find trainers worthy of inheriting Pogogo and the 6 heroes. This is why it's called the Guidance of the Black Rayquaza, because all of this, as if guided by Rayquaza, you assembled the 6 heroes at last, reclaimed Pogogo's power, and arrived at Rakua. I never imagined, this is what Free is saying, I never imagined this was all the will of Zygarde and Rayquaza. Zygarde and Rayquaza, since the beginning of this series, episode 1, had come together to kind of say, okay, we need to find trainers that are worthy of the 6 heroes' strength and worthy of Terapagos, bring them to Rakua, and stop all of this once and for all after 100 years of, them kind of just being like, okay, this stuff's gonna like come back, right? Like obviously Gibeon's gonna want to come back to Rakua. He's alive still, there's gonna be some bad stuff there. So this entire series was kind of played out by Rayquaza and Terapagos. Rayquaza coming out was no mere coincidence. Rayquaza was just trying to find the trainer that, trainer or trainers that were going to actually end up, potentially stopping all of this. And while it did, obviously our main characters brought together all the 6 heroes. They brought together Terapagos, and well, once they had actually, Rayquaza had done that, they got the 5 heroes and they got Terapagos. Rayquaza had come out in Area 0. Like, okay, it's time. You gather them all. You're good. Let's go to Rakua, finish this shit, which is why Rayquaza is obviously so willing, or was so willing to go with Roy after that fight of like testing their, testing all of their strength, which is great. And then Lucius goes in to say that Rayquaza didn't even aid them in this. This was not like Rayquaza actually forcing them. Like obviously, that was the intent, is that Rayquaza and Zygarde was trying to find someone. They wanted some, to force someone on like this journey or whatever to actually, gather all these heroes, but our trio didn't even need to do that. They sought out Rakua on their own for Terapagos, and it was their adventure anyway. This wasn't something that was technically forced upon them because they were going to do it as was anyways, which is why Rayquaza, never interfered in their journey, never like tried to guide them. Well, I guess it did guide them to like where each hero was, but never like tried to force them on any specific path or anything. It let everyone figure it out on their own. It's like, how strong can they be on their own without, Rayquaza's assistance? Well, they clearly got very, very far. And then Gibeon asks, why did you allow them to unseal Rakua? And Lucius says that he wants them to get rid of the Rakurium. Rakurium cannot be sealed any longer, which it has been for the past 100 years, but eventually it's going to spread. If people get their hands on it, it's going to spread, it's going to break out, it's going to destroy the entire planet. It is a very dangerous substance given, everything that we know about it and its like spreading capabilities. So obviously he wants to be rid of it. He thinks that this should be done. And these people, Lico, Roy, Dot, and Freed are like the only ones that can really do it. The Rising Volt Tacklers, they are the ones that can do it because they were the ones that had actually ended up gathering the 6 heroes and Terapagos, after all of these like events that happened 100 years ago, right? So it makes sense that he would want them to be the ones to do it. Saying I want to work together to get rid of the Lockwium. And we got this cool frame of him, like, in front of Lockwium with just Terapagos chilling. Gotta love that there. And then Gibeon's like, no, I'd rather you didn't do that. It's mine. I want it. And then obviously Lucius, just kind of not really, he doesn't really even like chew into Gibeon. He's just like, you're just an idiot guy. You're just like you were 100 years ago. You can't see that this stuff is dangerous. Obviously there's big problems with like trying to keep it unsealed, trying to actually use it for human gain. Like even Lucius doesn't really like deny that it's got potentially good properties for humans. He just says it's too dangerous to mess with, which again is one kind of theme that I like in this show, is that you've got the theme of Lucius being a traditional, like, let's not touch this dangerous stuff that is going to potentially destroy the world. But on the other side of the spectrum, you've got yourself, Gibeon, right, who wants to use it for his not villainous purposes, but like the purposes of helping people. It's like you got, again, these clashing ideologies of let's not do this because it's dangerous, and we got let's do this even though it is dangerous because it can help people. And then you got people like the Rising Volt Tacklers in the middle who are like, this stuff is dangerous, but this stuff is good. Don't really know where to go with this because you got yourself your extremists, and then you've got your like more middle ground. It's very, very interesting to see, like, obviously Gibeon is not like a bad person. Clearly he really just isn't, but it's just like he's guided by this principle of wanting to do this because he knows it can help people, but obviously there is so much danger involved that it would lead a lot of people to not want to do that, like Lucius, obviously. And Lucius being one of the strongest traders alongside Gibeon leads to a lot of big dramatic clashing, clearly. Saying he's just like he was 100 years ago. He can't see that this stuff is dangerous. And then obviously Gibeon clashes back, saying it lets you live longer and stronger. People in Pokemon can enjoy their even fuller lives. And then we get Lico thinking back to like, okay, maybe it can do that because you can see Gibeon doing it, but then you see its dangerous properties. Look at Spino's Umbreon and how enraged and feral it is with the stuff, right? So it's like you have these great properties, but you've also got the terrible, terrible side effects of them as well. Gibeon asked, why does Lucius interfere? He's like, obviously Gibeon is so absorbed in what his thought process is of like how good this can be for people in Pokemon and helping extend his own life. Clearly he's already survived 120 years and he only looks like he might be 50 some 60 years old. He looks like he's about that age. Obviously he's physically a lot weaker considering he fell out of his wheelchair, but it's like he clearly has aged a lot less as a result of the Lockwium, and it's just like the few shards that he actually has. He doesn't even have like a big amount of energy from it. He's like, why do you interfere in this stuff that can really help my life, help people's lives, help Pokemon lives? Like, why do you do that? And obviously Lucius again goes back to his own ideals. It's like, if you rely on powers beyond the laws of this world, perishing is all that awaits you, saying it's not a good power to try and control. It is dangerous, even if it does have these good properties, it's not worth it. And he says that, saying again, more traditional ideology, if you take things one step at a time, walking alongside Pokemon, you can forge links down to future generations. Saying he's seeing a better, like, more traditional sense of like, let's just have this bond with people in Pokemon. We've got our lives, they've got their lives. We can go down to future generations and do stuff like that, which we've obviously seen in the form of Lucius passing down his Pokemon to Lico. Not in the traditional sense, like literally passing them down, but I guess you could say that with Ristle, right? Where Ristle had passed down Terapagos's charm down to her daughter, then that woman to, I forget her name already, whatever Lico's grandmother's name is, Deanna. Is it Deanna or Deanna? One of the two. Passing down to her, and then Lico's mom, and then obviously to Lico herself, which actually I think it didn't even go to Lico's mom, did it? I think it just went to from her grandmother to Lico. Yeah, it went from grandmother to Lico. But you saw that more traditional sense with Terapagos, right? Where they had basically literally been passed down through generations. So, Lucius, it makes sense to him. And then Freed goes, if you get rid of the Lockwium, won't that mean the end of the paradise that is Rakua? It's like, if you do really get rid of this stuff is a paradise, will it actually, like, fade? Lucius counters with no, saying that the energy that has already been, exposed through Rakua has already put itself in this cycle and it won't fade. The ecosystem that is so flourishing of Rakua will not fade, even if the Lockwium ends up, getting disposed of, which I think is a bit of a stupid thing to bring up, not because like it doesn't make sense or whatever, but it's because like it basically makes you go more traditionally think that like Gibeon is an actual villain. It's like, so even if we get rid of the Lockwium, there won't be anything bad that'll happen to Rakua. Like there's no real stakes to it. Just by getting rid of it. It's just that it's like obviously seen as like a dangerous substance. It's like we see that Gibeon's got like this, good-hearted nature and like, the good reason for what he does, but it's still treating the Lockwium as if it's a completely bad substance because of the fact that, it's already interfered, it's already done a lot of this good stuff, as in the form of like making Lockwa such a flourishing ecosystem. But even if you get rid of it, it'll still persist. So it's like we should just get rid of this anyway. There's no like stakes to actually getting rid of it, other than obviously touching it, like destroying you or whatever. I mean, that's obviously stakes, but it's like there's no long-term sides to actually getting rid of it, which I think is a little bit. I mean, it makes sense for a series that's not meant to like actually go super in detail, because this stuff's for kids, obviously. I mean, that makes sense, but I don't know. I think it would have been just a little bit more interesting to have like, okay, if we get rid of the Lockwium, then the ecosystem of Lockwood would just go back to being like a more normal area. It wouldn't be nearly as flourishing. I think that would have been a bit more interesting to kind of explore, but that's just my opinion. I'm not really too worried about it either way. It doesn't really bother me that much. It sounds like the Lockwood doesn't really need the Lockwium anymore. Obviously, is what Spino's saying. It says, let's just go ahead and dig it up. And then Lucius says, if you dig it up by force, you'll end up activating it. Activation is what basically we saw with the Umbreon, Spino's Umbreon, with it going feral. Lockwium does have the passive nature to it, where it doesn't need to be activated or whatever. And apparently, its energy is still able to make the ecosystem thrive, but you don't want to activate it and make it go even more berserk. And it's got the ability, and he kind of describes it like, this is an energy. It's like, obviously don't touch because you don't want to. It's like humans are there's human Pokemon, whatever it is, it releases a wicked energy that causes them to go berserk. And Lucius kind of released that like as if to drive away human hands. It's like it's got its own defense mechanism basically from being controlled. He uses it as like a backup point, saying, Gibeon, this is why you shouldn't touch this, because it's literally the nature itself of the object telling you to not mess with it. You're playing too dangerously here. And we can see the Nidorino, fighting Pokemon go berserk with the stuff. And then obviously we got Spinel being a fucking idiot saying, if we make extensive research and mindful handling, we'll make use of it safely. He does not care. No, I'm sure, surely not. And obviously, Lucius is saying they've got hubris, big head, whatever you want to call it. What's really important is, and they gets cut off by Spinel saying, I don't care. Don't care, you're no more than a ghost. And Gibeon just tells Spinel to begin, where now the explorers are bringing out these machines to forcibly pump, like pressurize the ground, whatever it is they're doing. It seems like just applying pressure to the ground in order to actually dig up and activate the underground Lockwium. Gibeon does not want these shards that he's been using forever to stay immortal or like extend his lifetime or whatever. He doesn't want these shards anymore. He wants the big core that is underground, which is stated by Spinel, if the core awakens, Lockwium will be produced without end. So they will be able to infinitely harvest Lockwium, if everything goes right with this core. But obviously, with the nature of this stuff being so chaotic, there's a good chance that, obviously, given what Lucius says here, it'll go beyond human control. It will go completely out of control of those trying to dig it up, and it will just destroy the planet. It's currently dormant. It's inactive. It's like slowly spreading, probably, which is why Zygarde is so worried about it. But it's like, if you mess with it anymore, it's gonna actually just go berserk and probably destroy the entire fucking planet, right? And then obviously he just makes this point saying, "Oh, Exceed will handle it. We got our amazing technology. We'll make sure it doesn't, get go out of control." I'm sure you will, bud. I'm sure you will. And then we see the trees starting to grow, as we've seen with the effects of it, in every episode that we've seen in Lockwood, basically with the Lockwium basically making things go out of control in their growth, right? And then we see this big ass looking Dynamax cloud, basically, and we see the giant, the energy of the surrounding air, like the air is now being filled with the like Lockwood particles or whatever, Lockwium particles, affecting Pikachu and Charizard because of their weakened state with their battle with Spinel here. And we can see that Pikachu and Charizard are actually fighting each other because of the effects of the Berserk, going Berserk from the Lockwium, as we had saw with Spinel's Umbreon. Not too much new stuff here. The new stuff is seeing Cap go in a Pokeball. It's win the Pokeball, which is insane. That's honestly the most insane part of this episode to me. Not really. Yeah, and then we see all the explorers obviously are guarding the machines that are actually like pumping into the ground. They actually end up trying to attack them, and it doesn't work. Just obviously, well, they don't. They try to attack the machines, but the explorers are guarding them, so they have no way of stopping these machines. They just kind of have to sit by and watch. And then Gibeon says, under his with Rakurium under his command to awaken. Yeah, no, I don't think we should do that. Obviously, Lucius has the same kind of mindset, saying that the world will surely perish. Again, if Rakurium spreads, then it's just going to be nothing good. There's nothing good that can come from it. And then Gibeon says he just doesn't care. This gives, again, a Gibeon, like, they really want to kind of go in between with this guy as, like, people in Pokemon, surviving with Rakurium or whatever, like, he says he wants to use it to help people in Pokemon prosper, but then it goes to a more traditional villain route, somewhat like Lysander, where it's like, if they are to perish from Rakurium, then let them. People in Pokemon who take up the great power of Rakurium shall live on to usher in a new era of prosperity. Like, this makes him look more actually villainous than I really think that they had to do. I think if he was to just, like, use his point of helping people in Pokemon with his own immortality, I think they could have made a good point with the Rakurium being an actually potentially good and beneficial thing, as well as obviously Rakua being such a prosperous environment. Like, obviously there is good reason to believe, his goals would have been good, but obviously, as you can see, he's basically saying anyone who doesn't survive the expanse of the Rakurium can just die, which is not obviously not like a good thing for any character that's meant to be like an antagonist, but one with a good goal, right? So they kind of just go for that more traditional villain route with what Gibeon says there, which it is what it is, I suppose. Anyway, and then Rayquaza goes down, talks to Lucius a little bit, saying that there's no other choice. Everyone's got to gather energy into Terapagos to probably do the same thing that they had done 100 years ago to try and steal the Rakurium back up, and probably steal everyone here in Rakurium, which would be a little bit insane, but honestly, probably their best bet of play. And then we can see the amazing little panel here of Rayquaza and the surrounding heroes around Terapagos, awakening it into its stellar form. Is it stellar? What is Terapagos' different forms called? Because I know it's got two. It's got it's the dormant form, and then it's got the stellar form and all of that BS. Which one is this called again? Is it stellar? Or it's Terastal? Okay, just Terastal, Terapagos. Yeah, fair enough, right? Stellar is the big boy one, which I think we didn't we actually see that do the ceiling? I don't remember. Anyway, whatever. And then Gibeon kind of like snaps a little bit, saying his whole life's been devoted to Rakurium. Even after he got betrayed by Lucius and Ristal and having his dreams quashed, he believed in the potential of Rakurium and lived for 100 years and returned to Rakua. Like, this guy has done a lot. He has really shown his perseverance of wanting to actually use this Rakurium for, his goals. He is very, very, very determined, which, say it's a good thing, say it's a bad thing, it's kind of a give and take, obviously. Lucius kind of understands where Gibeon's coming from and saying that he had no intention of betraying him, and neither did Ristal, and that he was very happy, obviously, to like journey. It's like Gibeon, he seems like Gibeon's kind of coming off as like they intended to betray him, where Lucius is obviously like, no, we didn't want to betray you. You were just being dumb, and we had to stop you. And obviously, again, Gibeon is really just so locked in his own head of how his own ideals can help people in Pokemon, or kill people in Pokemon and let the ones that just live. Whatever you want to say about that. Again, his Pokemon is the order Pokemon, bruh. How is this any orderly? But it's like, how can you not understand my ideals? And then and then Lucius says they should have discussed things more back then, obviously. Like, there's obviously a lot of play in this that's like, we didn't really talk things out. Things just kind of escalated and we didn't really talk things out, which is a big theme in like humanity is like in general, kind of being brought into play here. It's like, we didn't talk about our problems enough, and it ended up exploding on us, basically. And well, he ends up apologizing to Gibeon. Gibeon kind of just says he doesn't care anymore. Like he's kind of considers it a little bit, but he's like, nah. Too late for a mere apology, and asks for Zygarde to lend him his aid. Now, he kind of pleads to Zygarde here, saying that despite Zygarde's betrayal and everything that's happened, he still believes in Zygarde as his partner, and that even though everyone had like left him or died or anything over the past 100 years, Zygarde is the one Pokemon that remained with him, and he begs Zygarde to help him and fight in this fight with him. And well, Zygarde does end up taking his side, seemingly. Right, which is nice thematically. I think like Zygarde obviously has its own plan here. Like, I'm sure that there's going to be something at the end of this where it's like Zygarde does not actually want the Rakurium to spread. It's going to do something to stop it. But at least for now, at least seeming like this, it wants to help Gibeon fight. And at least to some extent, for some reason. Not really sure why, but it does. It might have its own little will, but then it's also got its own will to like do its job as like the order Pokemon and like obviously stop these big threats from destroying the planet or destroying ecosystems, stuff like that. So I do love this entire like spiel here with after Gibeon saying like, I don't care about your apology, Zygarde, I know you betrayed me, but help me, please. You were my partner. You've been my partner for 100 years. Help me out. Help me fight them. And Zygarde obviously choosing him I really really like that part of this episode. It's super super good. Everyone they're confused why Zygarde's helping it, but honestly, as an audience, like as a someone in the actual show, it would make sense. Like, why are you? They're confused. Like, why after all of this is Zygarde doing this? But I'm sure Zygarde's got a plan. Me personally, Zygarde's got to have a plan for this, surely. Gibeon, and then yeah. It's a lot of stuff here. Amethio stands in front of Gibeon as they're preparing to fight, saying, and Gibeon says that Amethio thought he was going to be the explorer's heir one day. Like once Gibeon had eventually passed away, or like just handed down the torch, I guess, that it was going to be to Amethio, but clearly not. Saying that he's, turning his fangs against him, going to fight him, everything like that. But obviously, Amethio does have his own good reasons as well for doing this. He wants to protect Gibeon. He knows that this stuff is, dangerous, and it's obviously going to be hurting people in Pokemon, and probably even end up hurting Gibeon himself, who probably wouldn't even be alive now because if the Rakurium didn't exist, surely, but whatever. Amethio obviously wants to protect and help out Gibeon instead of obviously letting him kind of like destroy the world. But he then turns to our main protagonists and says that he needs their help to fight, which of course we've seen this before. We've seen them all fight together. Season 2's finale was one of the biggest parts of that, where we saw them all fight against the Rayquaza, but this time it's going to be them four with their terrestrialized starters, and the Ceruledge against Gibeon's Zygarde. Obviously, we're kind of upgrading antagonists here. We got the terrestrialized middle evolutions of the starters, and also Gibeon's Ceruledge, not Gibeon's Ceruledge, Amethio's Ceruledge against Gibeon's Zygarde, which is a great frame, by the way. Looking really, really cool. And that's it. That is pretty much it here. We do have an end frame for the next episode, which I will say right now, I guess kind of spoilers, but it's in the end card. We are going to be seeing Liko Floragato evolve into Meowscarada next episode, which is going to be very, very interesting to see. But we'll just have to see how it goes, right? So yeah, that was episode 87, The Guidance of the Black Rayquaza. Yeah, this stuff is very, very crazy. This series is insane. It's really ramping up. This is one of the probably going to be like the third to last episode, I think. Second to last, and the third to last. Yeah, I think third or fourth to last. I don't remember again. Until apparently probably the end of season 4, and then where are we going to go from there? Who's to say at that point? Because this is already extremely climactic. They're back in the Rakua, they're fighting the Zygarde. We're probably going to see like Mega Rayquaza, complete Zygarde, stuff like that appear very, very soon. But we'll just have to see. I plan on making more episodes covering this as the episodes release. Let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. Insane, man. This is insane. Pokemon Horizons is very, very hype. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Let me know what you like, any criticisms you have of this type of like analysis video. And yeah, peace.